So yes, I'm Chris Weber, Senior Engineer at Creative Commons. He already covered this slide. But every other moment of my life, I'm working on MediaGoblin, a project to try to help save the internet from the evils of media centralization. So here's our logo. Here's our logo. And so what is MediaGoblin? So MediaGoblin is a media publication system. Well, you can think of it as distributed or whatever, video, ASCII art. In fact, and actually audio is coming into the next release. In fact, it's extensible. You can even add new media types. A few people are interested in adding 3D support, so you can make kind of your own decentralized Thingiverse or etc. You could make a presentation system, make centralized slideshare. Why not? It's forward-facing. HTML5 technologies, and it's written in Python. I founded the project, actually I said less than a year ago, but I looked at my commit log right before this, and it's actually like 3 days a year ago. So, and it has actually a really large contributor community. So, here's a screenshot. It looks pretty good in that browser right there. And here's another screenshot. Ooh, and here's a real screenshot. So, I promise I'll stop those ASCII art fake things, although there will be more ASCII art in this. There's a good reason why there's ASCII art support in MediaGoblin. I'm kind of have an ASCII art fetish. So there's about 35 to 40 contributors to the project. About 30 of them are committers. We actually have some people from the Free Software Foundation and the Software Freedom Law Center. About 5 to 10 people actively contributing at any time in the project. I've pretty much spent all my vacation weekdays and holiday time on it, and it's a GNU project. So I actually think that it being a GNU project is a pretty significant thing. GNU has a pretty high bar as in terms of what they allow as projects, and I think it kind of gives a good symbol that, yes, we're out there trying to do something that's good for the commons and good for society. So, and actually, it's probably a good idea if we go straight to MediaGoblin.org. This is MediaGoblin.org. You go here, this is actually, there's 2 sites. This is MediaGoblin.org, which is a site about the software. It's not actually running an instance. But, and if you go to tour, it'll actually show you some really outdated screenshots that show off how cool MediaGoblin is. And you're like, wow, it has all these cool things. Like, look at this thing. Ooh, that's not the thing that I wanted to show. You're like, look at this thing right here. This looks so cool. Oh, wow, I can actually upload images and even add attachments and things to it like that. I can make an image and upload the blend file or something like that. Totally crazy. So MediaGoblin is pretty awesome. Why MediaGoblin? So the web is kind of moving more and more in this centralized direction. So you know, if you're using Flickr or you're using YouTube or you're using Vimeo or something like that, so you've got all your content on a few of these kind of silos of content. And what happens if they start locking you down? What happens if they go away? What would happen to video on the internet if YouTube went away? Well, it would probably move somewhere else, but we'd lose a lot of it. But that's really sad. That is a sad internet. The way that the internet should be is a lot more like this. A federated network, a beautiful network, bonds together. If damage happens, we route around it. That's the way the internet's supposed to work. And so that's what we're trying to do. I'm going to talk more about federation later, but specifically, you can think of examples of federation as they already exist. The web generally is supposed to exist like this, but if you look at something like email, you can have 2 separate email servers. Communicating between them is exactly as if you were running on the same email server. Same thing with Jabber or XMPP, if you prefer the much more boring standardized name. You can set up 2 instances, and they can talk to each other, and it's like you're on the same thing. That's what we'd like to have happen. At the moment, we actually don't have that. We actually have it so that you can set up your own instances and then they don't talk together. But we're getting close to it. More on that later. But anyway, so yes, sad internets. I already started talking about this. But yeah, and there's other things. Like you might want to define your own communities. Maybe you want to make a community explicitly for Pokemon Silver fan art. I don't know. Why not do it? You can do it. So we can make the internet unsad again. So federation, I already talked about this again, and OStatus is the way that we're going to do it. But I wanted to go for a brief period, a tangent on licensing choice, specifically because I think copyleft has been getting a lot of kind of more hate. If you end up showing up in things like, I show up at PyCon and DjangoCon and stuff like that, and a lot of people are like, oh, you're using the GPL. GPL is like not free, man. It's like, it's trudging on our freedoms because like I'm not able to do this thing. So I wanted to so there's a few, I guess I have this like talk within a talk. It's just this mini rant about a few kind of perspectives of copyleft. If copyleft, for those of you who don't know, is it makes it so that if you end up releasing code to something, other people can take that and mess with it, but they have to give back. The AGPL specifically prevents something that's called the software as a service loophole, which means that you can take even a GPL application, you can make modifications to it, but since you don't actually distribute that program, you just run the program, you never have to give it back. The AGPL means that you do have to give it back in that case. And so there's some reasons why some people object to copyleft. There's kind of this classic BSD-esque approach to it, which is that it's not free because copyright itself is almost kind of this form of violence, and that copyleft tries to use copyright in this kind of judo move to defend itself. And they're like, but we don't want anything to do even to fight back. We don't want to use that system at all. So I can actually respect that, but it's actually really hard to support that. And then there's because if somebody ends up attacking it, then you have to be okay with saying the other way that you're going to approach this is to actually move in the other direction. And there's this other perspective, which is that it's strategically suboptimal. Like, we have a bunch of different companies. We are more likely to get contributors back if we don't use a copyleft license because then they can give away their non-secret sauce and etc. I think this is a legitimate point, and in many places it actually makes a lot of sense. But there's a deceptive combination of, wow, 2 typos in 1 sentence, of the above, which is, I don't know what that was. But there's a deceptive combination of the above that kind of talks about as if it's speaking about freedom, but it's actually talking about strategy. And it goes a little bit like this. I told you there'd be more ASCII art. Don't use that copyleft license. It's non-free. This is based on a true story. It destroys your freedoms. Oh no, I like free. Why isn't it free? I can't use it in my proprietary program with my proprietary license. But your license is even more restrictive point for point, and even forbids basic distribution and modification. What are you, retarded? Okay, I don't support that word, but based on a true story, which is kind of a defense against something I shouldn't be saying. Anyway, so I think copyleft is still useful. I think copyleft is kind of a regulation of the commons, and it might not be necessary or optimal even for things like web libraries, but when you have something like MediaGoblin, which is a web application, I think it actually makes a lot of sense. And when there's this article by the people on GitHub, which is like, open source almost everything. Give away everything but your secret sauce. But why not also give away your secret sauce? If you give away everything but your actual Flickr, then you've given developers freedom, but you're not giving users freedom. And that's the point at which I think we're very much so failing today. We have a full ecosystem of tools to be able to build web applications. But developers are like, I'll give that back, I'll give that back, I'll give back all these tools. But when it comes to the actual applications, they're like, no, that's secret sauce, I'm not going to give that away. But I think that actually we need to start, we have these tools, it's really possible to move forward. So that's one of the things that I want to do with MediaGoblin is move into that space. Move into the area of user freedom and not just developer freedom. So, in a final quote, and I'm quoting myself, which makes me a total pretentious douchebag, but if you're waving your finger at me over the edge of your MacBook about copyleft being non-free while committing to your GitHub account in between working on your software as a service web application and the game you're working on for the iOS App Store, sorry, but I'm not going to take you seriously. Quoted me. So I hope I didn't alienate my audience, but I felt like I needed to have this talk within a talk. But no more copyleft discussion, on to the software. More cool things. Let's look at we already looked at MediaGoblin.org, so let's look at some other things. I said that MediaGoblin is useful for images. So for example, here is somebody's site. This is their profile on MediaGoblin. It looks so good. Here is, in fact, a picture of an adorable baby. We have the biggest selection of like nerd baby sites on the internet. MediaGoblin has dominated this market. It's wonderful. Why not set up a site where you can have images and videos of your children all in the same place that you can run yourself? It's wonderful. So, other things. I said we can support video. Look how great this looks. Oh my gosh. It looks so great. And this is using all HTML5 stuff. No Flash. I couldn't remember the word. See, it's so irrelevant, I don't even remember what it's called. This uses WebM. We don't actually support H.264 in the future. Maybe somebody will add a plugin for it later when we have plugins, but we actually support, out of the box, a way to be able to watch videos using patent non-encumbered codecs in a thing that actually looks really nice. Okay, moving on. What other things do I have here to show off as pictures? Oh, yeah, I told you we have ASCII art. The key to a successful MediaGoblin installation: install all the dependencies. That's where everybody gets stuck. Man, it's actually kind of hard to navigate this. So this is a picture I actually showed earlier. We actually have a lot of cool features. Look at this. OpenStreetMap support. Whoa, we've got that. We're only a year old, and we're still kind of mostly talking to developers, but we already have OpenStreetMap, which obviously that makes it super awesome. We've got CC licensing support. You can tag things. Man, awesome. Okay, I'm just advertising this thing up here. Look, and this is about to come out. Ignore this weird range input thing not supported. I don't know what the hell that is. But anyway. Yeah. You couldn't hear that, but it's pronunciation of what I always call kuniko, because I'm some sort of terrible American, which is in Esperanto kunitso or something like that, which is going to be, I'll talk about that more later. But another media type that we support, and which is wonderful, and okay, I should move on to other things. I don't even remember what, oh yeah. Yeah, here's a homepage of MediaGoblin, somebody's site with a whole bunch of stuff on it. Anyway, back to my slides. Yeah, I should show that. Just look at this. Actually, I guess I showed off as much as I really wanted to show off. But like, look, I got a 3D printed thing, and I took a picture of it, and I put it up, and it looks good. Anyway. Okay, on to other things. So, we have some other miscellaneous cool features, OpenStreetMap, attachments, I already talked about that. Yeah, you can do comments, stuff like that, although you have to be a registered user on that. I'm going to get better at that soon. Creative Commons support, all sorts of stuff. Pretty soon we'll have a plugin system. Then we'll have even more stuff. Anything you want. So the technology, we're using Python. In fact, we're doing a kind of Django minus Django setup here. We have routes, WebOb, Jinja2, SQL Alchemy, and WT Forms. And you're probably like, what WTF is this guy even talking about, WT Forms? So anyway, if you've ever used Django, actually, if you've done any development in Django, MediaGoblin looks extremely familiar already. There's a lot of kind of custom things that we wanted to do that we didn't want to use Django directly. I won't go into them. But I'm really inspired by the actual design of Django. And actually, this is kind of a side point. There's this idea in Python that you should be able to write these web applications in something called WSGI and not even have to use a web framework was one of the eventual goals of this. Actually, that's kind of already true. I mean, look at this code. If you don't know how to code in Django, this is going to be totally boring. But anyway, look at this code. It's like, it looks like Django. Look at these models. They almost look like Django, except it's SQL Alchemy. Okay, so anyway, one of the major things, we gave a poster session on this, and we were like, yeah, well, you were originally MongoDB, and we're moving to SQL. Everybody's like, and then moving to SQL, why would you go in that direction? Everybody goes the other way. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so why was that? It's actually not because I hate MongoDB. There's been kind of a bunch of like posts saying about MongoDB sucks and stuff like that lately, and that's actually not true. MongoDB is actually doing something extremely interesting in the way that they're kind of trying to take this hybrid approach of a lot of the things that you find familiar in SQL and bringing them to NoSQL, such as indexing and stuff like that. But part of the problem with MongoDB scale to the moon. But part of the problem is that we want to be able to build that kind of world where there's a whole bunch of separate little sites, and it's actually hard for those to scale up pretty well. Well, that, and plus I had a conversation with the DeviantArt people, and they're like, yeah, we use SQL and Memcache, and it works just fine. I'm like, well, that's not going to be our scaling issue if we manage to get up to that size. But anyway, so it's not because I hate Mongo. It's actually because allocating 2 gigabytes of space and using only in-memory stuff is way too much for kind of a small instance. And I think SQL Alchemy is pretty awesome. I guess I really don't have much else to say other than that bullet point. But if you do anything in Python and SQL, use SQL Alchemy. So I wanted to talk a bit about our extensible media types and processing. I told you would be subjected to so much ASCII art in this, and look at what... Anyway, so the kind of setup that we have, what we tried to do from the very beginning, we had planned out this kind of multimedia kind of roadmap. Part of the reason for it, or part of the reason for me working on MediaGoblin at all, was actually because I'm tired of putting all my things in completely separate places. That's really annoying for me. So if you submit media, it kind of goes through this whole pipe of things. This is actually from our documentation somewhere. Actually at that link right at the bottom. Anyway, but we actually are using something called Celery, which makes this really awesome so that if you wanted to even, you can actually set this up so that you could have your main kind of MediaGoblin instance or maybe a few separate MediaGoblin instances. And if you submit a video, you're not going to have your users time out as it's being processed because it actually moves into a background job. It gets processed on, and you can even set it up to move to some other servers. You've got another server. That other server actually processes it. We've already designed from scalability from like day one. Now, nobody's actually scaling at this thing because it's just a bunch of people hosting baby sites at the moment. But in the future, it'll be so awesome, and everybody's like, wow, I scaled up so fast. How did these guys plan it out like that? Because we thought about it from day one, that's why. Anyway, oh, no, there's another thing on that slide. We actually have extensible types. Things like rack space cloud files or OpenStack, which is a standard version of it. Or you could plug in something completely crazy. You could even plug in, make some sort of system that like mounts other directories on top of other directories in a fake format. I'm not going to go into that. It would be really terrible. But it's extensible. So I wanted to talk about federation, so let's talk about federation. OStatus is specifically the technology that we want to use for federation. Has anybody here used StatusNet or Identica, or even knows what that is? Raise your hands. Okay, we have about like 15 people maybe, which is way better than I'd expected almost any conference otherwise. So the StatusNet is actually designed, if you go to, well, why don't I go there right now? If you go to, for example, my Identica instance, right, for my Identica, what the idea is that this is kind of like a Twitter that actually like, except a free software Twitter that actually like assembles messages from all these different sites and everything like that. And it actually uses a variety of interesting technologies all under the kind of umbrella term of OStatus, such as PubSub, Salmon, a bunch of other things like that. You can go to OStatus.org and actually look it up. Actually, interestingly enough, a lot of these technologies have been developed at Google. So in some sense, I'm actually kind of hoping that maybe someday in the future, Google will be like, we're not winning this game. Maybe we can start federating because we already built these technologies to federate and start federating out of Google+. But I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen. But anyway, so it's already used by StatusNet, Diaspora, and stuff like that. So, and we're actually planning on building a library to make this easier for Python developers as we start moving into that space. We're finishing up our SQL transition right now. I think it might even be done by the end of this weekend. We might even have it switched over from Mongo to SQL. And at that point, we're going to start focusing on both a plugin system, an API system, and federation. And hopefully, we can make this a lot easier for a lot of other Python developers. And we won't use copyleft probably in this case because this is an instance where I said, copyleft, I think, is about strategy, and this is an instance where I actually think it's better if just everybody starts using federation technologies and et cetera. So, other things coming soon. I said we're having a plugin infrastructure coming soon. My friend Wilcon Green is planning out this awesome plugin system. Pretty soon, we won't have to have OpenStreetMap really badly integrated into the main code base. It'll be its own thing. You want to add something like, you want to add some sort of fiscal bovine plugin to make a whole bunch of money? You could do it. Yeah, we need theming. We're actually going to be working on an API soon. We actually have, hilariously enough, from the PythonCon sprints a little bit ago, we actually have an Android app and no API to hook it up to. So, hopefully we'll get an API soon, and in fact we will because the Icelandic government is going to pay to work on it part-time, which is amazing! Our first MediaGoblin paid developer. So things are actually moving in a really interesting direction right now. So I'm also hoping there will be a lot more deployments. Right now, we have this technology that's getting really awesome, but we've mostly focused on just talking to developers. And part of the reason for this is that part of the reason why I've only been talking to nerd audiences like you guys is that once you end up kind of shooting out and like saying to them, look, we're building this thing, there's kind of this. Free software world's a little bit more patient and kind of understands that things take a while. But I think there's kind of a ticking time bomb, and I think that's happened to Diaspora. Once you kind of announce to the world, people are like, okay, when's it ready? And you have to have some sort of thing ready. So even though the technology is getting really good, one of the reasons why we haven't spoken too much about it outside of the free and open source software community is that we actually really kind of want it to get to a point where we can open it up to the world and that things will be able to move in the right direction. And I think over the next year, we're actually going to start to see quite a few MediaGoblin sites. So hopefully I'm right. Maybe I can come back next year and I'm gonna be like totally right, and otherwise I can come back next year and somebody in the audience was like, you were totally wrong, and that would be lame. I don't know why my voice got so doodly in this talk. Totally wrong. But anyway, so we could use your help. So when it comes to how did that line get in there? I don't know. So so when it comes to web development, as in terms of libraries, free software is a default, but we're seriously lacking in real web applications right now that are free software. And I really think we need to move in this direction. We actually need a lot of help. I said we're sprinting, but that's actually a line from a previous talk I gave. But anyway, we do need your help. We have all these things coming up: plugin infrastructure, media types, finishing the SQL land, and federation, and a whole bunch of other things. And we have like the most friendly community possible in free software, I think. We're like, come in, we welcome you. People come into the channel, everybody's nice. Why shouldn't you? We don't just need coder help. We actually need graphic design help. We need help with documentation. We need people to help test deploying things. We need people to help test the software generally. I'm hoping that at least a few people in this audience will get so excited that they'll be like, wow, I can't just wait to get involved in MediaGoblin. And I will be like, yes. So. Also, happy birthday. I already said this in the talk, but we 1 year old. I just looked at my commit logs. Yeah. So. It's actually kind of a lie, because I started this project like a year before I actually started committing to it and put like 3 commits in it, ignored it, and then came back in a year and like, I'm doing it. So. Oh, we also have stickers. Look at that little guy. Cute little sticker. You can totally have one. I've got like a bunch of them. So you should show up, and then you can take it, and then you can like put it on your laptop, and then every time you look at it, you'll think, oh, MediaGoblin, what a great project that was. And then maybe you can put it on somebody else's laptop, and they'll be like, what's this thing doing here? But it'll be great. I right there, handing that to, is actually from Calabra. I just got dinner with him the other night, and I ended up taking this picture, and he's one of the guys who works on GStreamer, and so like I tricked him into being in this picture, so I can be like, yeah, look, we're all cool with like the GStreamer folks, we transcode our video and audio with that. Look how cool we are. So like, yeah, no. But anyway, contact me. So you can come up and say hello. I'm also super friendly. You can send me an email or add me to Jabber. In fact, you can stalk me. All my contact info is available on my website, dustycloud.org. Just go to dustycloud.org/contact. You can even send letters to my address. Hopefully they're not that creepy. But anyway, you can join my project. You can join our project. Go to MediaGoblin.org/join. It's so nice. Join Pound MediaGoblin. I don't know where the pound went on that, but Pound MediaGoblin at irc.freenode.net. And you'll jump in and you'll be like, hey, I went to the Flourish talk. It was so great. And we'll be like, hey, we love to have your help. So like, yeah, everything will be great. That's the end of the presentation there. Did I have a couple more things to show off? I probably did. I don't even remember. Oh, yeah. I don't know. That's the end of it. Anybody got any questions? You.
How would you overcome, I guess it's called the network effect, where like people are on YouTube because everybody else is on YouTube?
Well, effect yet, because mostly been talking to programmers and stuff. So the answer is, the question maybe is even more appropriately, how will we overcome the network effect? And the answer is that's a super hard problem. I mean, that's been a super hard problem for StatusNet and Diaspora and stuff like that. You're completely right. That's actually one of the troubles, is that when you end up getting like a bunch of people, they're all on the same site, they're like, the problem is sometimes not even just building the software, it's actually getting people to move over to it. I think we've got a little bit easier than like StatusNet and Identica did, because for example, even if people have a login on YouTube and they don't have one on Vimeo, they'll still go over to somebody's Vimeo thing and watch the thing, right? So I think it'll be a little bit easier because we're so focused on display, and we do have a social aspect that we want to federate. I guess I didn't even talk about what we want to federate, but it's kind of stuff like Flickr pools and like, favoriting and stuff like that. But I mean, I think we'll have it a little bit easier, but part of the answer, I think, is also that if you take a look, if you were around back in the early 90s and you were using like Jabber and you were like, hey guys, AIM totally sucks. Every few days they do something to totally dig over everyone. You guys should use this Jabber thing. People will be like, Jabber? Nobody's on that thing. It's totally lame. And one day, like Google ended up deploying it on Google, like Google, the Gmail default talk, and Facebook implemented it, and then suddenly it was federated. It took them a while to turn that on. But anyway, like, yeah, Jabber, are you using anything else? Are you using anything else for IM? Why would you do that? Jabber's already here, and it's so great. So I think part of the thing is that it's going to take a while. And not a fun answer, but I do think it'll be a little bit easier for us than it was for StatusNet, but I think it's still going to be hard. And part of the thing is just going to have to be that we're going to have really enthusiastic people getting involved, and we're going to have some things ready that make it easy for own sites and also to be able to use existing sites, which is something we also still need to work on. Did that answer your question at all? Okay.
Federation goes. If I have 30,000 pictures or so I want to put into a pool somewhere and want somebody else to be able to look at them, how is that going to work?
Okay, so here's how I imagine it's going to happen. So, so there's a few ways that this can end up happening. There's a protocol called Salmon, for one thing, which actually allows you to kind of like go and specifically, it uses HTTP, but it allows you to actually kind of ping this other server to say, hey, I put this thing right here. And instead of them pulling you and like checking the way they do in an RSS feed, there's a few of these technologies, but this one's kind of one-to-one. It's like specifically, this site, this guy, he just updated this thing. And you're like, pew. So I think that that's actually what's going to happen as in terms of viewing it, I imagine you'll just send them the link. As in terms of actually adding something to that pool, I imagine it's going to be something along the lines of you go to that site, you want to add it. It's somewhat similar to what Evan's happening on Identica right now. If I want to subscribe to evan.status.net, logged in on evan.status.net, because I don't have an account there at all, I just want to subscribe to him, I can hit subscribe here, and it actually asks me where my account is. So I would type cweber at Identica, and it would move me back over to my site where I can actually subscribe to it. It's not really a great interface, but it works, and then when it brings me back to my site, I can kind of confirm. There's a few things that can be done to make this better, I think, but I think that things are going to kind of be somewhat along these lines as in terms of adding things where you're going to be basically kind of pinging things and saying, hey, this is available. There's a few other kind of aspects of this technology. As in terms of viewing it, I think viewing things is generally pretty easy, unless if it's private. If it's a private photo pool or something like that, that might be a little bit more complex. I think there's a number of things. I'm really excited about what's happening right now with Mozilla's browser ID stuff. I think OpenID is currently super hard to use, but browser ID is actually a pretty good system. I don't know if you've looked at it, but look at it for kind of being able to mark like, here's this sort of user, I'm giving them permissions, and that people can log in a decentralized way. Other than that, I don't have, did that answer your question at all? Okay, good.
So what's involved in getting this installed? Is it a typical deployment, you set it up on a Linux box, you host it from your house over cable?
Good question. So there's a few things. There's actually, if you go to MediaGoblin.org and you take a look, it's got a few things on here. It says run it, use it, and join us. And if you click on run it, it'll actually bring you to a page in our docs. One of the things that's a little bit frustrating is we actually have kind of fragmented docs. We have stuff on docs.mediagoblin.org that describes for system and how to set things up. And then we also have a page on our wiki. If you actually move back and you click on this join us thing, it says setting up a local instance for development. It'll actually bring you to this page that's called the hacking how-to on the wiki. So let me say this. If you want to look at setting up your own site, go to docs.mediagoblin.org. If you want to look at setting up something just for hacking, go to the hacking how-to on our wiki. And as the amount of work that's involved, right now it's kind of Python packaging focused. I'd like to get things to the point where it's kind of more like Debian oriented, where you can just kind of like apt-get install MediaGoblin. But it's going to take a while. We used a lot of kind of like fresh dependencies and stuff like that when we started with things, partly because we knew we would rather use something that's kind of very recent and that's not necessarily within things like Debian and Fedora and stuff like that, because we would rather kind of wait till those things get stable later because the software itself was unstable. But I think eventually it'll be easier. In the meanwhile, it's not that hard. The hacking how-to, especially if you just want to set up a local one for development, it's actually pretty straightforward if you're running Debian or Ubuntu or Fedora. If you're running OS X or Windows, it's probably a lot harder. But, nah, yeah, whatever. OS X people are always talking about, OS X is like the best development. It's like the only development for like Python development. They're like, how do I get these packages installed? How do I get Python imaging libraries installed? It's so frustrating. Well, maybe it's not the best environment. Okay, I'm being smug again. But anyway, so yeah, we have this documentation that kind of walks you through everything. Actually, one of the cool things, and maybe I will end up regretting it, so I've got a server running here. One of the things that I actually have really, and this is really kind of more for kind of development, but I've really been enjoying the software PageKite lately, which allows you to kind of quickly shoot up an instance and just show it to people via this kind of proxying. So I'm actually tethering over the Wi-Fi right now, but if you go to cweber.pagekite.me, you should actually see a MediaGoblin instance at the moment being hosted from being tethered on my laptop right now while I'm giving this presentation. If everybody starts doing that, I'm going to really regret it, especially because I have registration enabled on here, and who knows what people in this audience will do. But anyway, so it's a little bit complex to set up, but it's not that hard. If you know Python packaging, it's a lot easier, but we would like to get things to the point where it's just a lot easier to deploy. Actually, along the deployment route, one of the things that I actually feel pretty strongly about is that when we started this project, some people were like, you should do in PHP and MySQL because that's the easiest way to deploy things, which is technically correct and extremely dystopian. You know, so like there's this idea, like, you know, you're like, oh, because it's so easy to set things up on shared hosting. You just send over the zip file of like PHPBB or something like that, then you just unzip it, and then you click on it, and it's got some wizard or something like that, and that was way easy. And it also sucks. It sucks. I really hate it. Like, I'd really like to move over to a world where we're not stuck in this PHP and MySQL dystopia for like free software web applications just because it's easier right now. I also think shared hosting sucks. Shared hosting sucks. I'm really excited that things are moving more and more towards kind of a VPN-style deployment setup, where, you know, you have like Linode and you have sites like that, and you also have things happening where like people are actually deploying more and more often to things like OpenStack or EC2, which I like less, but and stuff like that. And actually, what I'm really interested in for making these things easier is kind of abstract descriptions of servers. So if you've ever looked at Puppet and stuff like that, you actually don't install everything by running the commands yourself. You actually have config files that actually describe, here's how the entire server is set up. And then you just run this thing, and it sets everything up, and it even checks to make sure that it's up to date and stuff like that. Right now, those tools are not really well developed for development and that, for like deployment, for like set up a MediaGoblin instance via this like Puppet manifest. Although somebody has made a Puppet manifest for that, but it could be. You know, it could be at the point where you have this config file that says, here's how to set up a site that has MediaGoblin and StatusNet and a whole bunch of things already pre-set up, and you just, you know, like some site can run some sort of like, you know, hosted instance. You just click the config options, it generates a config file, hosts it or something like that. That's a lot less dystopian than shared hosting, which sucks. Still sucks. I hate it. Anyway, did that answer it? Oh, okay.
So in the beginning you're talking about like Flickr and how Flickr is centralized.
Right.
So like Flickr goes down, you know, all your pictures are available in the background. Let's say you're MediaGoblin. You have all your apps that are not MediaGoblin. I'm a big fan. I want to view it, but your MediaGoblin's down. How does Federation save you? Like how would you imagine, like, does certain stuff go to other servers?
So that's a common question about this, because people are asking, well, does it copy? If I've got videos, does it actually copy everybody's videos to my site? It's gonna, you know, we joke about maybe making a plugin for that we call like disk goblin or something like disk goblin. But that's part of the fun of the goblin. But like, I actually don't think that's a good route by default, because it will suck up your entire thing. But I think it would be a lot more like blogging. You know, if you end up having your own site, and if you've got your blog, which had all these wonderful recipes on it, and I love them so much, but it went down, now I can't see them anymore. So it sucked for me, but on the other hand, blogging would survive. And if Flickr went down right now, a lot of images would, you know, not survive. If YouTube went down, the amount of video that exists, it wouldn't survive. You know, you lose so many cat videos. And just imagine that. It's like a cat genocide on the internet. Terrible. Yeah, it's a catastrophe. Yes. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So.
I'm thinking, one of the advantages of a site like Flickr, or some of the more centralized systems is, let's say that you have some piece of content that gets viral. Like actually taking all of those requests in through your own personal media server is probably going to crash your server and make the content unavailable at the time when people would be most interested in using it. Now, but you mentioned that you were trying to orchestrate potentially hosting media through other.
So one thing, the example that I gave with running that PageKite, which, am I still running it? I'm going to shut that thing down. But PageKite was just kind of an example of just how easy it was to be able to set this up and do that. I don't recommend that people use PageKite to deploy actual MediaGoblin instances. I mean, you should probably set up something like a Linode or something else like that to be able to run it. And the biggest MediaGoblin site that currently is running, I showed a bunch of stuff from it earlier on ng.wanborg.se. This guy, he actually has some statistics on his site. It's the biggest MediaGoblin site that exists currently, and it uses, I think, but it's able to handle, it has videos on it and stuff like that. It's able to handle a good amount of stuff. So if you ended up getting something that went viral or something like that, I hate that word, viral, but if it did go viral, even though I would hate the word, so it might not be great for you, but it actually might not be as bad as you'd think. I also think that actually one of the things for the future, even though I think it's really important for these people to set up more and more instances for their family and friends and their communities and stuff like that, I think it's actually important that some really big instances exist. I think it's actually important, one of the really awesome things I think right now is that we've built this thing and somebody could just go make a bunch of money off of it. And I would love it if they would. Like, you want to go make a MediaGoblin site, you want to run something that's like you charge people for premium accounts or something like that, in the way that Flickr does, where it's freemium, like you have the blah, 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 or something like that. I mean, our plugin system needs to finalize. That would really be kind of an easy thing to do. But, you could still already do it. It's important that that option exists. And I think that it will exist. Because I think once the software's there and it's good enough, and it's getting good enough, I already showed a lot of cool things today, but there's a lot of rough edges. But I think once it's good enough, I really hope I'm right that somebody is going to realize I can make a bunch of money off of this thing right now. And there's a bunch of suckers out there that built it for me. Of course, it's something for the HEPL, so they got to give back their stuff back. So suckers, it's like a sucker dynamic. So anyway.
Is that I have semi-real-time stats that are being collected, and as soon as something starts to get a lot of attention, there's just a redirect. So the content is pushed up to like an Amazon or some other distributed CDN, and then I just send the redirects.
And we already support that. We actually already support cloud files and stuff like that, and we already support a lot of those things like that. So actually, in cloud files, for example, or Amazon's storage or whatever, are already built to kind of scale to what already exists. So you could run it so that the stuff is hosted on your own local file system, but you also could set it up so that some that could take it over. And you might even be able to set it up in the way that you're talking about, which is pretty clever, kind of flipping the switch. It's running normally off of my Linode, but as soon as it ends up hitting a threshold, it like flips it over. Yeah, why not? That's a good approach to things. I think right behind you there was also somebody who was asking a question. Oh, maybe not. Okay.
As far as front end, is MediaGoblin supported in mobile devices? Like, would it be able to pull this up on an Android phone?
If you open up, I think the MediaGoblin.com, which is running an older revision of things, and actually is not the nicest MediaGoblin deployment running, even though I'm the one running it right now. But if you go to mg.wanborg.se, which is this address up here at the top, and you take a look at it, it actually scales pretty well. In fact, you can see it scaling automatically right now here. If I end up full screening this, it has the newer and older on the side here. But if I end up unfull screening it, since I'm at a low resolution, it kind of moves it up here. So we are designing with mobile stuff in mind. There's some ways that it could be better, but we have an awesome graphic designer named Jeff Van Schendel, who, like, I don't know how I managed to trick this guy into being on the project, but he's totally awesome. And he's already thinking about a lot of these things, so yeah. Other questions?
What would it take to get you to reconsider your
Oh, to make it so that you copy on federation or something like that? I think actually you don't even need to reconsider it. The federation stuff comes in, it could make a backup of its stuff for you. So that's one of the things that we're planning on, like somebody could do that. It's a bit too heavy for most sites, but that's the reason why we're building a plugin system. So my lame answer to that is we're not going to do a MediaGoblin core plugin that you have to turn on or something like that. But I still think it's a little bit too heavy for most sites to have to copy down that much stuff, especially if they're also federating to some sites that have really big videos or something like that. Yeah.
Skinning, is there support for?
That's one of the things we need right now. We need theming stuff. If you're interested in getting involved, I mean, I'd be more than happy to work with you. There was one guy who ran his baby site that skinned it to make it look nice and everything. Like now that set up this extra directory that kind of overrides your templates and stuff. But of course, then we had some sort of update and it's totally broken stuff. So we need proper theming support. And I think it will be coming. That's one of the things that's on the horizon, but it's just, we've really been focused on a lot of infrastructure stuff over the last year, but that's something that we want. We don't have it yet, but any other questions? You again.
Validation of the media that you upload?
Yeah. So you mean to make sure that it's actually, to make sure that if you end up uploading, you say you're uploading an image and it's actually uploading a .exe file or something like that, right? Yeah, so during the processing phase, there we go. So during this processing phase, if you see right here, which is when it actually goes into the processing queue, the media type that you create actually throw an exception while it's processing it saying the image. And when they can't open the image, they say it's an invalid media type. So it'll get hit there, basically. So if you try uploading a JavaScript file, it'll notice that. And some media types, like the ASCII art one, just take a look to see if it looks like a text file or something like that. And if it doesn't look like a text file, they'll barf. So if you try uploading some binary file there, it'll be like, blah. But anyway, yeah. Any other questions? Well, thanks everyone for listening to my talk.